something that we teach called CARE. CARE is K-A-R-E, and it's an acronym for keep, attain, revive, or expand. So when you're making a call, Chuck, is this a client I want to keep? Is this a client I am trying to revive, bring back from the dead, an old client? Is it a current client that I'm looking to expand? Or is it a brand new client I'm looking to attain? Those are 4 different categories and 4 different calls. You've got to find out, you got to separate them out. How many of you are doing revival calls right now, where you're calling people you haven't talked to in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years? Hey man, how you doing? How you getting through this? There you go. And what's interesting, Chuck, is you're having conversations with them that have nothing to do with business for the first 5 to 10 to 15 minutes, correct? That's all bonding time. One of the things we have to do is we have to slow down. We have to literally back up and realize that everybody is dealing with the exact same tension that we're dealing with right now. And if we don't change the way we approach people, if we act, smell, sound, or touch, or feel like a salesperson, if they ever feel they're being sold, they back off and they don't want to talk to you. So stop trying to sell people stuff and find out about their situation. Many of you have had sales training before. ABC in sales stands for what? Does anybody remember what that means? Have ever seen Glenn Ross? Always be closing is what it means. ABC, always be closing. If you want to have some fun, go Google Alec Baldwin, Glenn Ross speech. Be prepared for a lot of foul language, but it's always be closing. And that's been sales for decades. Like the cat, by the way. Had a black cat for years, had 2 of them. ABC means always be curious today. Why? Why are you having problems? Why, tell me what's going on. If you start being curious to people, they'll want to talk to you. And they don't perceive us as a salesperson. People are scared to submit to any new projects at this time without knowing what's going on in the future economy. Understood. Here's the challenge. How many of us remember 2009, 2010, the great crash, right? The recession. They did studies. They found that the companies that pulled their horns in, got into protect mode, didn't spend money, those were the companies that shrank and didn't survive. The companies that said, this is an opportunity, who got aggressive in their marketing, those are the ones that thrived. I had one of my best years ever in 2011 and followed up in 2012. Why? Because in 2009, I said, I decided I'm not going to participate in the recession. It's a decision that I made, and I just kept pushing forward.
So I'm going to be showing you the ins and outs of the process we use to create campaigns that drive revenue and convert leads. And it's something that we're calling the RADIATE Method. So no matter where you are in your social media marketing journey, these tips hopefully will help you take action and develop campaigns that actually impact your bottom line. So this is the method that we use at Reach to create social media campaigns that convert leads and followers to customers. Because leads and followers are great, right? But if they're not buying anything from you, it's kind of just sitting in a list somewhere and not really doing anything for your business. So we'll talk about setting realistic revenue goals, knowing your audience and your business, how to create content, launch campaigns, and do more of what is working. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive in. And then this next slide is probably the first one you'll want to screenshot. So just like you would for anything in your business, it's important to have revenue in mind when it comes to launching a social media campaign. There are things that we call vanity metrics on social media. So these are things like likes and reach. This is great if your only goal is to get your name out there, but if your goal is to get more customers and make more sales, you've got to understand how to use social media to impact your bottom line. And that starts with establishing what we call realistic revenue. So to do this, you'll need to assess your last 3 months of business and set revenue goals and a budget based on the last 3 months. And then ask yourself, what can you do more of, less of, or not at all? So let's say you put a lot of time into LinkedIn, and you have a lot of followers, but you don't get any new customers from that channel. But on Instagram, maybe you're getting 5 new leads a month that actually do convert. So when we say, what can you do more of, less of, or not at all, we mean, where can you put your energies into what channels are right for your business that are actually converting people to customers. And this is because you're a business owner and you have limited time. So you can't do it all, but you can do more of what is profitable. So here's how you can take action after this presentation. I encourage you to set a realistic revenue goal that takes into consideration your dreams. So this is the revenue goal you want to hit someday. Your time, so how much time will you dedicate to your business? Your focus, which is what's generating revenue, like LinkedIn versus Instagram versus YouTube. And your ability, what can you do right now? Maybe you can't produce a really well-directed video for YouTube, but you feel comfortable taking pictures and posting them on Instagram. So what can you do right now? What's that first easy and best next step?
So what's the principles of ownership thinking? Well, the first one is core values. Now you're going to get a presentation in a couple of weeks on the EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, or traction model, and they spend a lot of time talking about core values. Core values are your foundational belief system in a company. Many people do not have core values, or if they have them, it's written on a piece of paper and they're never utilized. So core values is where things start, because it's the values that everybody in the organization adheres to. You want to maintain high expectations of performance. Total transparency, admit mistakes, meaning that if you make a mistake, you can bring it forward. You think about us, not me. And you understand the why of what we do. That's the passion. There's a great book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And I like to very quickly tell a story that he has in that book that really drives home the why piece of why we do things, the passion which drives us and hopefully drives our employees. The story is that to be at the turn of the last century, there was a contest on that was sponsored by the United States government to award a prize, recognition in money, to the first organization that achieved powered manned flight. There was a guy named Langley, who Langley Air Force Base is named after, where the CIA headquarters is. So he went on to certainly do good things, but at the time he was the odds-on favorite. He had the press, he had the engineers. He was the one that if anybody was going to bet who was going to get there first, it was going to be him. Well, as the story goes, he was in it for the fame and fortune. He didn't know about these two guys in Dayton, Ohio, in a bicycle shop, who had no money, who had no press, but they were driven by a passion to change the world. And as a result of that, they achieved it first. So the Wright brothers weren't even on the radar until that morning at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. So the idea here is, now listen, we're not achieving powered manned flight here, regardless of what you do. But the idea is, what's the passion in what you do, and that everybody shares that passion. Understand your responsibilities, the employees' responsibilities, the owner's responsibilities, and the impact on the organization. Create an organization of excellence, not pockets of excellence. Understand that everybody's contribution to the whole, and I made this bold, is to understand the basic finances of a you make money. It then leads into some of the tools we can utilize to drive incentive-based performance versus entitlement-based performance.
Payroll considerations and concerns in 2020, COVID-19 changes, the payroll protection program, and then with the president's deferred payroll taxes, you know, whether or not to choose to defer those payroll taxes, because at some point they're not waived, they will need to be paid. Employee paid time off. If somebody contracts COVID in the workforce, in the job site, they're entitled to 14 days off. Essentially what, you know, they got to prove that they got COVID, but if they test positive and it's proven to be in the work site, they do get 14 days paid time off. And from a workers' comp standpoint, it's their word is taken, you know, so the onus is on the employer, not on the employee in that particular case. So the landscape is certainly changing. Payroll challenges, classification of workers, what constitutes W-2s, what constitutes 1099s. IRS has very specific guidelines for what constitutes a W-2 employee versus 1099. And the IRS definitions will hold. So if you get audited or you get penalized by the IRS, you got to prove that somebody's 1099. And then on workers' compensation, classification of the person's job responsibilities in the right workers' comp code is absolutely critical. Workers' comp can cancel, penalize, and when you're shopping for a PEO, you want to do your legwork. There's, as we said, there's over 700 PEOs, so there's a lot of options out there. But when you're shopping, you want to make sure that they're adhering and not taking shortcuts to get somebody classified that shouldn't be, because that's going to hurt the employer if it comes up in an audit. So exemptions need to be properly applied. Calculating gross pay, properly make deductions, identify and withhold taxes for employees and the employer's burden, administer deferred compensation, sick pay, and other compensation, such as ACA compliant health plan cost, stock options, expense reimbursements, relocations, mileage, all must be properly classified and recognized. Next slide, please. So the payroll challenges, especially now, got to follow the proper policies, procedures, documentation requirements. If garnishments or levies, correctly compute and file quarterly 941s, year-end requirements, and establish the new year requirements. And the requirements change from year to year, obviously. So, and then if you get audited, by the way, you should have a disaster recovery plan so that all your payroll information is not only backed up on your computer, but you have it backed up on a off-site computer as well, so that in case you had a hurricane or tornado or fire or for whatever reason your business was destroyed, all that information can be gathered up very quickly and you're not losing any time or minimal time. So, and now with COVID, payroll is more complex. And if you don't have a specialist in payroll, there is a significant potential for error and corrections that need to be made, unfortunately, constantly. And with this year, with COVID and all the guidance coming from the federal government, seems to be a changing landscape almost every month, as we've seen during this pandemic.
Right, and so this model stems from a discovery that all entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurial leaders are wrestling with 136 issues simultaneously. And to the degree you can strengthen 6 key components of your business, those 136 issues just start falling into place because they're just symptoms of the real root cause. And so I'm going to take you on a journey to strengthen 6 key components. We got to solve those issues at the root, make them go away forever. So I'm going to go around at a high level, and then I'm going to come back through in a lot of detail. So here we go. So the first key component of your business, of any business, is the vision component. And this is getting everybody 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you plan to get there. All right, 2 tools when we come back through. The people component is simply this. You cannot achieve a great vision without great people. And so we got to define what makes for great people in your unique organization. Data component, all about running your business on facts, figures, objective information, as opposed to feelings and egos and subjective emotions that often drive decision-making in growth-oriented entrepreneurial companies. The idea is this: when your vision, people, and data components are strong, you've got this powerful, really well-run organization, and all of your issues are just jumping right out at you. They're just screaming at you, and we just got to get good at solving them, right? And so we just call those issues. And this is all about getting good at solving your problems as they arise, really getting down to the root issue, teeing it up, knocking it down, making it go away forever. 5th key component, I like to think of this, and write this here if you have the model in front of you. This is your franchise model, right? So this is about doing the most important things the right and best way every single time so that you can scale, that you're more consistent, you're more profitable, and it makes things just way easier to manage. And then the 6th key component is all about bringing that vision down to the ground, executing on it with discipline and accountability every day. 2 tools or disciplines when we come back to the traction component. And we like to say that vision without traction is hallucination. So we have to master the ability to have discipline and accountability so that we actually go execute on a great vision. Okay.